Hey guys and occasional girls, my name is GrrrVahrrr and this is Shank too.
I'd love to spoil you the story, but there is nothing to spoil. The game doesn't have one. Almost.
Well, it has a plot that can be summarized in one sentence. Shank comes home after killing Caesar in the first game only to find an evil military force kidnapping a woman that's like a mother to him. So she must be saved and bad guys killed. That's it. Done.
I know that the story of the first game also could be summarized in one sentence, but only if you have finished the game. The presentation was kinda cool, and full thing is revealed only during the final boss fight. In Shank 2, everything is clear from the start. You get out of the boss and see baddies you gotta kill. In the first hour, your orphanage gets burned down and the woman who runs it gets kidnapped. No secrets, no flashbacks, no subplots, nothing.
But is it such a bad thing for a game like Shank 2? In the end of the day, if you want a story, read a book. 2D brawlers are to kill stuff. And does Shank 2 do it well? Oh yeah, it does.
Unlike the first game, before every mission you can choose what weapons you'll use. The number of weapons became smaller than in the first game, which isn't a problem cause most of the weapons in the first game were kinda useless. In here I would say the problem still stays, but to the lesser extent. You have fewer weapons, which I know should be good for certain levels. I just can't see any reason to use anything else rather than a shotgun, due to spread and the amounts of damage which neither throwing knives nor pistols have. Or I have never switched back to machetes, cause the sledgehammer and chainsaw are so much better and so much more fun to use. The last thing you pick is kinda important and reflect your style of play. Grenades explode on impact, mines are good for ground control, and molotovs do damage over time to enemies that are in flames. All of the three are effective, and you really need to decide which one to use. Unlike a choice between chainsaw and a sledgehammer, where it's just a choice between smashing or ripping to shreds, whichever you feel like doing at the moment.
One of the main differences between weapon systems in two games is that right now there is a much greater variety of weapons that you can pick up after killing an enemy. Which they were using against you, by the way. And not only there is a great number of them, but all of them are so much fun to use. There are bottles, baseball bats, tire irons, flamethrowers, crates, boxes full of knives, and so much more. My favorites are a shovel, which literally excavates enemies, a giant fire axe with its devastating power of spinning, and a frozen fish. Yes, a frozen fish! You can beat people up with a fucking frozen fish! How cool is that? Weapons you pick up can't be used for long, cause they break quite fast, but there are so many of them that you can easily find the replacement, if you want to. Not that you need to. However, some of the weapons are good in certain situations, which makes the decision on which weapon to use or pick up quite important for an outcome of the fight.
Combat mechanics also went through several changes, and thank God all of them were for the better, making fights even more spectacular. The first big change is that now you have 3 different attacks with both of your weapons. Normal attack, upwards attack, and downwards attack. These attacks are not just a gimmick. They're necessary if you want to keep your combo high and help a lot killing big and fat enemies. And it is incredibly satisfying to impale an enemy on your chainsaw, jiggling him in the air while his guts and blood are sprayed all over the place. And when he falls, finishing him with a chainsaw blow through his skull and into the floor, performing the most awesome type of lobotomy. Ultra violence, how I love it. The second big change, which I'm really glad that they've made, is the dodge mechanic, and how it changed the difficulty of combat by making it more skillful and hardcore. Remember how in the first game on normal difficulty you were able to button mash the entire game using dodge and block only in the boss fights where it was necessary to activate the cutscene? Well, not anymore. The game became harder, and as a result you will need to use dodge pretty much all the time. Or you will see this over and over again. And since you have to dodge a lot in this game, the controls for dodge also changed, making it really convenient to execute. On the 360 controller, you just need to pull the right trigger in the direction you want to dodge, and that's it. Unlike the first game, where it was holding block and moving in the direction you need to dodge. Although, in the first game you could kinda get away with not dodging at all. Well, now it's necessary for survival, and controls help you with that, not getting in your way like before. By the way, if you are not playing with a 360 controller, you're doing it wrong.
I don't like addressing the difficulty issue a lot, cause it's different for every single person. For people like me who grew up playing old Nintendo and PC games, all these modern titles in this era of casual gaming just seem too easy and not challenging at all on its basic difficulty. However, for a lot of people, modern titles are difficult enough. And it also depends on the mood a lot. If you want just to relax and kill stuff for a couple of hours, it's one thing, but if you want more challenging and hardcore experience, it's a totally different one.
But let's get back to the combat mechanics. The third change they made is the introduction of the counter moves, which allow you to counter an attack of soften up melee enemies or enemies with guns that are aiming at you. Most of the time the counter move results in grabbing enemy's weapon and using it against him in a brutal and awesome way. Shoving a wooden board into a guy's throat, or unloading an AK clip in the back of an annoying bastard that was shooting at you will never get old. The mechanic is also vital for survival, and mastering it will save you lots of trouble keeping up the flow of the combat to achieve high scores and combos, dealing with big enemies and especially enemies with guns who, as I said, can get really annoying and deal lots of damage. Sometimes I actually waited to execute the counter move on an enemy which I had encountered for the first time, just to watch the killing animation. And they always deliver a great spectacle. There are two minor changes that spice up combat a little bit. The first one is that you can grab big and fat enemies who have already been somewhat damaged. Most importantly, there are a whole load of environmental stuff that can be used in combat. All of them can be summed up by lure enemies into a trap, press button, people die. These traps are only available during difficult fights and are unique for every level. Like, factories have grinders, docks, fishes, warehouses, crates, morgue has flames, etc.
Now, let's better move to the second most important thing in a game like Shank. Boss fights. Why do I care so much about boss fights? Because it's the stuff that you remember after finishing the game. It fucking ends with a boss fight after all. Yes, the core gameplay is more important, cause if it sucks, you will never get to the boss in the first place, and you can never make a boss fight that isn't ultimately dull. But the bosses are enemies that you refer to describing the game. They usually have names, some kind of character and backstory. They have special attacks and weapons unlike other opponents, and they should provide a challenge that should be satisfying to overcome. You will never remember the 137th thug with a baseball bat, but I doubt you will forget a guy named Inferno.
So let's take a look at boss fights in Shank 2, and if the developers made them better than boring repetitive shit we faced in the first game. And actually they did, praise the gods. They made the worst part of the first game one of the best parts of the second one. Every boss is unique and has a feature that makes him stand out. Let's take a look. Razor. Physically strong, summons adds and throws flaming tires at you. Inferno. As you might guess, he uses fire and has a giant flamethrower. So guess what he does? Roselle. This is actually my favorite boss of the game, just because how tense the fight was. She does all sorts of stuff, attacks you in melee, teleports and throws knives at you, flies around conjuring lightning and summons wolves. I killed her from the first time, and after she died I had to take a break just to relax and loosen up tension a bit. Look how I finished the fight.
I had this much health and so did she. I was on the edge of my seat screaming, "Die, you evil bitch!" And when she did, it was the fuck yeah moment of my playthrough. If your game can evoke such feelings, you have done something right.
But let's continue. Abang, the easiest boss of the game. Guess the designers felt that we needed a rest after Roselle. He just summons adds and can't do anything by his own. That fat bastard. Cyclops. This asshole is really annoying. He is physically strong and punches the ground that makes you fall. Doctor. Agile and fast, he uses all sorts of knives and a chain with the knives attached to it. He also summons sexy nurses to his aid. I wish I had this power. And the final boss of the game, Magnus. He actually deserves this title cause he's a real pain in the ass. He's fast, strong, has chain knives, summons miniguns, throws bombs at you, and has this attack which I still don't know how to dodge. By the way, there's also a crane boss, but I just can't even count it as a boss, only as a minor inconvenience.
Overall, each boss has his special attacks and weapons. They don't just charge at you all the time, but have a certain strategy of killing you. The second best thing about Shank's 2 boss fights is that now you can follow your own playstyle to kill each and every one of the bosses. You don't have to rely on cutscenes to do it for you. Even though you can activate the cutscene attack, but first you have to stagger the bosses, and I managed to do it only once or twice per boss.
It would also be unfair to forget the cutscenes after you have defeated each of the bosses. They are just amazingly violent, which is always a plus. Though, my favorite cutscene is this one.
He destroyed a helicopter and killed a shark just out of nowhere. I just imagine the developer's conversation. So, Shank destroys a helicopter and falls into the ocean? You know what we need? What? A giant man-eating shark that Shank kills with his bare hands. Fuck yeah.
Nevertheless, I have bad news for all the co-op fans over there. There is no co-op campaign in Shank 2, even though there is a second character, Karina, which has her own unique set of weapons and attacks, and we even use her in a ship level. But the only way to see her in co-op is to do a survival mode together. In this mode, you have to defend supply stations from the bombers, killing wave after wave of enemies. There is also a shop to buy stuff that will help you to survive as long as possible, and 3 levels to introduce a little bit of variety to the process.
To be honest, I've only played it solo and only once. It was okay, but I doubt I'll play it again. I don't have any idea how fast it can bore you out of your mind if you're playing with a friend, cause everything is more fun with friends. But I believe that if game gives you an option to play it solo, it should be fun. If it isn't, the game has failed. That is why I don't care much for Borderlands franchise, for instance.
It is done. Magnus is dead.
Shank, wait, I have someone who wants to speak to you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for finding me. I always knew you were a good man. A great man.
Overall, Shank 2 is a great action game, with lots of elements which can bring fun and joy for all the family. Most of them involve killing living things. Yes, there is almost no story and there is no co-op campaign, but there is awesome action, memorable characters and bosses, and a skill ceiling that you'll definitely spend some time reaching. The game has improved on every combat aspect from the first game, and is a perfect example of how to learn on your mistakes. Shank 1 is okay, Shank 2 is great. The name's GrrrVahrrr, and I shall see you from within my next video.
Goodbye, goodbye, see you again. Goodbye, goodbye, see you, my friends. Goodbye, goodbye.